Okay, so this is another update on the 50 gallon with the DIY LED lights on it. Starting on the left side here, you can see the Bacopa's come along pretty well. It's pretty much doubled in size over the last 3 weeks since the last update. As it's getting closer to the lights, it looks as if it's actually getting a lot more dense. You can see the smaller ones in the foreground. The leaves are quite a bit further apart, probably a good quarter-inch or more, versus the ones nearer to the top where they're pretty much just completely compact. Down the front, the Glosso, it's not dying, it's not expanding the way it had been, but it's also not being covered with algae the way it had been either. So I think as a trade-off, that's not too bad. It's holding its own. I think it's still moving forward as opposed to dying back. So I'm going to call that one kind of a win anyway. The dwarf baby tears, not too much of it. I mean, I only started with a few small plugs. There's some down the very bottom left corner and a few pieces here and there. It's actually expanding, which is kind of nice. I mean, I've never really had much luck with the baby tears, especially as a ground cover and on a tall tank the way this one is. I plan on using it probably more on hardscape later on, probably wood and things of that effect that I'm going to be using in this tank when I redo it. The storage iron weapons, pretty hard to see. It's kind of in and amongst the chain swords there. It's expanding pretty nicely. It's actually very dense and very low. It's not growing tall at all. If anything, it might be half an inch tall versus 3 inches around sort of thing. So it's acting as if it's getting more light than it needs, I think, by staying low and wide. And then the one thing that was a little strange are the brown crypts there that are kind of spread throughout the midground. They pretty much melted with the change in the light. Any really long leaves, and the leaves are right to the top of the tank at one point, just melted straight in half, and if not even lower than that, and just floated off. So the lower growth is going strong. Again, another sign that they're getting more light than they need, and they tend to grow lower and flatter, almost a rosette as opposed to a tall plant. So they're doing pretty well as far as that goes. The Crypt ciliata, it's the wider leaf stuff. There's one we'll get to, it's sort of in the right hand side, but it's also poking up kind of in the middle of this picture here, just between the Rotala rotundifolia. It's at the back there, and it's a pretty slow growing plant, but it's doing pretty well. But again, the longer leaves, they just got burned right through by the lights by the looks of it. You can see one leaf with a piece hanging off of it. It literally had a hole burnt right through it, and it just it's not doing well. But the nice thing is all of the other new growth that's in there is showing no signs of any actual algae. The algae eaters are still pretty fat, so there's obviously still algae growth in there, but it seems to be under control. The Anubias friseri, really difficult to see. It's in the back there as well. It's coming along okay as well. It's sort of a low light plant, and it's doing what low light plants do, growing slow, especially as an Anubias. Again, the Rotala rotundifolia in the mid sort of this picture here. It's obviously taken off. I mean, it's grown what, 11, 12 inches in 3 weeks. I mean, that's pretty amazing, and it's just covered with oxygen pearl as well. So it's doing pretty cool. I'm just going to pan a bit here, and we'll look at the other side of the tank. So, there's some Java fern in there. The specific varieties are what they are. There's the one that's sort of a staghorn type, as well as standard in there as well, and they're doing what they do, which is grow pretty slowly. There's some Taiwan moss. It's kind of going a little crazy, actually. I keep cutting big chunks of it out, usually probably half a cup at a time sort of thing, and chucking it into other tanks. So it's doing pretty well. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the new lights. I did go with the full number of lights that I purchased. I originally had 18 on the tank, and I increased it by adding the extra 12. As you can see, it's a lot brighter and a lot nicer looking, I think, and you can see the lights at the top of the tank there. So everything's coming along pretty well. I really enjoy the colors. I like the way the light shimmers in the tank. And for a grand total expenditure of about $60 for the full 33-watt lights, LEDs. You know, so that's 90 watts of LEDs on this 50-gallon tank, and it doesn't look as bright as some I've seen, but that's simply because as you can see at the top of the tank, the lights are not all white. There's red and blue in there that don't really show up on the plants because the plants actually absorb that light. So overall, the fish are all doing really well. They tend to school a lot more near the top of the tank with these as opposed to the T5 high outputs, which were really bright and you know, cause the fish usually to hide within the plants more often. So everything seems to be going pretty well. Anyway, that's it. We'll probably check in again another 3 weeks to a month. Thanks a lot. Take care.